Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Indicator 4 support session on disproportionality and discipline. If you are viewing this video, your district or LEA likely has a finding in this area on the latest released special education profile. This session is built to help you have a little bit of a better understanding on disproportionality and discipline, and it can help your team understand a little bit about the required actions that will need to be taken as a result of this finding and how you can access support from SST8 moving forward through this process. My name is Rachel Underkoffer. I am one of the special education consultants here at SST8, and Janine Sensasti is our director here at SST8, and she also does quite a bit of work in disproportionality. Janine is working more this year on identification and placement. I'm working a little bit more in the area of discipline this year. We also have Stacy Smith. She is not listed on the slide, but she is another consultant here at our region, and she tends to work more in the early childhood realm. And so sometimes she will also help support districts because disproportionality does look at children ages 3 to 5 as well for the discipline findings. So sometimes Stacy will help out, but typically it'll be Janine or myself that you'll contact and reach out to for the disproportionality findings for 4, 9, and 10. You can follow along to the slides for this presentation by following this bit.ly link. You will have access on our YouTube playlist to the video for a long period of time. So if you need to come back to the video or if you want others to view the video, that will be there on our YouTube channel posted for a while. And then if you go to our bit.ly link, you could print out the slides if you wanted to pass them along to somebody else. On the morning of January 12th, we held an overview session that kind of went on for about 45 minutes to an hour and just gave a synopsis of the entire special education profile, the different indicators, the different required actions, some of the due dates, and it really just gave a big synopsis of just everything in general. But for our presentation today that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be focusing specifically on indicator 4, which is disproportionality and discipline. If you would like to access the slides, follow the bit.ly link for the overview session on the screen here. And that video for the live session that we held on January 12th will also be uploaded to our YouTube playlist for you to look at later. So today, we're going to talk about a couple different things. I'm just going to very briefly go over the indicator for disproportionality and discipline. We're going to talk a little bit about the SRSR, which is your self-review summary report and your improvement plan that you'll need to complete as required actions and submitted to the state. We'll also talk a little bit about team membership, who should be a part of that team when it comes to completing these plans. And then I'll give you some information about how to schedule SST support for your SRSR, and then just some common challenges, some FYIs to be on the lookout for as you complete this information. ODE has compiled several resources in the last couple of years on disproportionality. You can find these on their website, and some of these are very, very helpful, especially if you have other team members who maybe aren't watching these videos and they might need to be involved somehow. The 15-minute YouTube video that Kara Waldron put together gives a really nice snapshot of how to look at the special education profile when it comes to disproportionality. The fiscal guidance document might be very helpful for your treasurer or some of your other administrators who might be helping with your CCIP and when it comes to redirecting those funds as a result of this indicator finding. There is an OCALICON presentation that Janine actually gave, which is the how disproportionality impacts Ohio students. And there's also an FAQ document. So these are available to you if you need them. So let's get into the indicator a little bit, just give you a brief overview. The special education profile was released in December, and many people already are aware of how to access it through the OHID portal. It used to be the SAFE account, but then it switched over to this new portal in the last couple of years. So your special education profile can be found under the sites and applications. And so if you have any trouble accessing that, for some reason you can't get into it, please let us know. We can definitely try to give you some tips and suggestions and pull it for you if you need to. One thing to keep in mind is that not everybody in your district is going to have access to the special education profile. It's typically limited to just some administrators within the district. So if you're going to be pulling in other people on your team, you might need to print it for them. You might need to help show this to them because they may not necessarily be allowed to have access. So it's something just to keep in mind as we go through this process. There's also the indicator review process manual. It is quite lengthy. It's like 70 to 80 pages long, and it kind of goes over all of the different indicators in the state of Ohio. It can be a really helpful tool and resource. What you will find is they did this a little differently this year at the state. They actually, in your special education profile, if you have a finding in a specific area, such as disproportionality in discipline, or child find, or graduation, or something like that, they actually linked your very specific manual for that indicator. It can be tricky to find. So what you have to do is in your special education profile, you go to the finding and you click the little plus sign to kind of expand everything. So you'll see where your required actions are. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to find your linked discipline manual there. It's kind of hard to tell. It's not very easily accessible. It took us a few minutes to kind of scroll through everything and try to find it. It's at the very bottom of the screen once you expand everything. So let's talk a little bit about disproportionality. Disproportionality occurs when students of any racial or ethnic subgroups are identified for special education, placed in more restrictive settings, or are disciplined markedly at higher rates than their peers. So Ohio's threshold that they set is 2.50. So anything above 2.5 is where you will be found out of compliance. That's saying that there's students in your district that are being disciplined at a much greater rate than others. And so we want to make sure that we keep that rate under 2.5. One thing to remember is that the risk ratio of 2.5 indicates that students are of a certain racial group are 2.5 times more likely to experience an outcome than students not in that racial group. And that it is calculated by your EMIS and your enrollment data for full-time students. On the screen, I list out the different racial and ethnic groups that is calculated for. And another thing to keep in mind is that districts that have this finding, after you do your improvement plan, your activities, your SRSR, districts that reduce the ratio by 0.25 for 2 consecutive years will qualify for reasonable progress, what Ohio deems as reasonable progress, and you will not be required to redirect funds. You'll still have access to technical assistance, but when you do get that initial finding, you will be redirecting funds. So like I was saying, indicator 4, there's some ways to calculate this percentage, but it really focuses on the discrepancies in the rates of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 cumulative days in a school year for children with IEPs compared to children without disabilities. So when this finding occurs for your district, districts with those risk ratios of 2.5 for 3 consecutive years must redirect 15% of IDEA Part B funds towards early intervention services. And so this could be a variety of different activities that could be done by professional development through SST. It could be lots of other kinds of, programs that you may implement, or trainings that you find, or things that you want to do within your district to help your staff, really get to the root cause of this and provide educational and behavioral based services that will prevent this finding from occurring in the future. In terms of the 15% redirection, You will be assigned somebody, a specialist from the resource management section of OEC to assist with your CCIP for the 2023 school year. So that's where your treasurer will come into play and some other administrators to kind of help figure out how are you going to redirect those funds. So one of the first steps in this indicator finding is the investigation of records. So the investigation of records, the due date this year is February 9th, 2022. And so that would be the date that you would submit a data appeal form, if applicable. We'll talk a little bit about that just briefly. I'm not going to go into significant detail on that. There's information in the manual about that under the actions in the special education profile. If you feel for some reason that there was some type of data error that occurred that led to you having this finding, maybe there were duplicates submitted or something was coded incorrectly, that's when you would submit that data appeal form to the state to say, hey, you know, we want to take a look at this data again for our district because we don't feel like we do have a finding in this area. So that is something that you do not need SST participation in order to submit that data appeal form. However, please keep in mind, it will pause your work in this process until they verify and approve that form. So just be cognizant of that because if they come back and they say, no, we don't approve that, then you will still have other activities that you need to complete moving forward. February 9th is also the due date for the student record items for the investigation of records. So as a part of this finding, you will need to submit records to the state of students with disabilities, and that will be a part of your special education profile. They'll give you an Excel sheet of some information for student records, and you'll need to submit some documentation to the state for them to review and to kind of look at. And so that February 9th due date is going to be here very quickly before we know it. So you will want to jump on this as soon as possible to make sure that you meet that deadline. So just a little bit of an overview of the investigation of records process. First, as a team, and we'll talk about team membership in a little bit, you are going to complete the discipline record review tally in selecting 5 students and pulling their records. And then what you will do is you'll record the SSID for each student on the student record submission form. And they made it a little bit easier this year. You can submit that form. They have a submit button right on that form after you input the information. So that makes it a little bit easier for everybody rather than submitting and uploading to multiple places. For the student record submission form, you just type in some of your information and submit that right online. And then the third part is you'll compile more student records in your special education profile. It lists out for you exactly what records they want for those students. And so you'll be pulling IEPs, you'll be pulling FBAs, BIPs, MDRs. They might ask for the school calendar, suspension notices, documentation of students' race and ethnicity, various sections of the IEP, such as Section 6 for the goals, Section 7, especially design instruction, Section 11, least restrictive environment. They will ask for different things, and that'll be all outlined for you in your special education profile under those required actions. Then you will want to make sure that you label your student records accordingly with the corresponding line number on the student record submission form. This is where some people have a common challenge, is not labeling things correctly. And this is something that the monitors have really heavily emphasized with us as SST consultants, is that they really want to pass along some tips and suggestions. And those are in the overview session from this morning that Janine and I had. That's in another YouTube video of ways to kind of avoid those errors that can occur from that. So just be careful and be sure that you're labeling everything correctly. For number 5 and number 6, please draw your attention to the bold font as you will upload items to 2 different sites, and this is a common area where people have difficulties and a lot of questions. So by February 9th, you will need to upload to the monitoring and tracking system, the discipline record review tally, and then you will submit the student records to a separate site that's a secure site. And those are both due by February 9th. So the district, just to keep in mind, the district must demonstrate correction for all individual records that are found to be non-compliant. And for districts with non-compliance, additional records specific to the racial and ethnic group flagged will be requested at the end of this process to demonstrate systemic improvement. So you may be submitting records a couple of different times throughout the year, this upcoming year, to show that you've made improvements in progress after you've gotten feedback from the monitors on the first set of records that you submit by February 9th. So this is just some of the information I took directly from the special education profile. Like I was saying before, you'll select 5 currently enrolled students. You will list their SSIDs on the student record submission form. This is all located in your district profile, special education profile. You will submit certain documents to them. You will submit the student record submission form to one area, and then you will upload student record items to another area. So just wanted to give a brief overview of kind of what those forms look like, or that site. So the student record forms is on the left-hand side here, and this is where you would take those 5 record items that you're pulling, and you would list out the SSIDs and answer a little bit of information, and then you would just click submit this form. So they made that a little bit easier. And then on the right-hand side is the site where you would actually upload all the student documents. So it's a little bit, unwieldy that you have to do kind of 2 separate things, but that is what is required by the state. So just make sure that you are very careful in labeling everything and uploading everything and filling everything out that you need to. Now let's get into the self-review summary report. This is often referred to as the SRSR. It's designed to help your team in analyzing your data, to establish root cause, priority needs, and then also to help inform your improvement plan. You can download your self-review summary report under district required actions in the special education profile. So the self-review summary report process is outlined on the next couple of slides here. The SRSR is really a tool that helps you and your team analyze, discuss what might have led to this finding in the first place, what are some things that need to be improved, what are some processes that might need to be revised, what is some training staff might need to have. So the SRSR can actually be a really helpful tool for a lot of different reasons. So first, you're going to review and discuss the questions that are on the SRSR. There are quite a few questions on there. So this is something that is a little bit time intensive. And we'll take pulling some information from other resources and summarizing it and then determining if it's an area of concern. And then secondly, if it's an area of concern, you will determine the root cause as a team. Now, all of the things that you find, all areas of concern or that contribute to the concern, you may not necessarily think that it's a big area of concern necessarily for you at that time. That's where you have to priority rank each area of concern. Now, there also may be some areas that are actually a strength for you in your district. And so those are things to be celebrated. And so just because you find an area that might contribute to the concern doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that needs to be addressed. Like I said, you have to, for the third item, you have to priority rank each area of concern. You may not be able to address every single thing that you find as you talk with your team about what's contributing to this issue, but really prioritize what are the things that you feel are most important or things that would really help lead you into a more positive direction with this finding for the future, and that is something that will help drive your improvement plan. I just put on here just kind of a snapshot of what the SRSR kind of looks like, just so that when you see the document, you're not surprised. The front cover page is where you list the names of all the people on your team, their titles, and who's submitting everything. And then section A is for data appeals only. So if you are going to be submitting a data appeal, you would fill out section A, which talks a little bit about EMIS, talks a little bit about who gets trained on EMIS, who is completing all the EMIS activities and things like that. And then you'll see that this year they kind of separated the form a little bit more into a data analysis section and a root cause analysis section. And then you would go in the red and green areas and you would say, is this an area of concern? You would type yes, type no, and then the priority. Priority, would it be a 1 in ranking? It's your highest priority, a 2, a 3, and that would help drive your improvement plan later on. Section A is typically something that you can complete on your own without the help of SST8. And then section B is much more in depth, and that's something that we will help you complete together. And that's really for those indicators that's really for that non-compliance of this indicator. So some things just to kind of be ready to consider. These questions on the screen here are areas of section A of the SRSR. If you are completing a data appeal and feel your finding was an error, they will ask you questions such as who is responsible for overseeing the EMIS, what is the process, what kinds of training has that person had, what kind of technical assistance, how often by whom is it provided. And so those are things just to keep in mind as you start to prepare for this process. Start thinking about some of those questions. These questions on the screen here are to be considered in section B of the SRSR. And there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of data that may need to be compiled ahead of time. So SST is going to help you with your SRSR in terms of the non-compliance finding. And we will kind of review information together and talk about root cause and prioritize and rank things. But be ready, because some of this information will really need to be collected ahead of time of our meeting together. We will only have a short time to meet together to go over your SRSR. And so you may need to pull data from different data systems, databases that you have, to kind of have that information ready to go for us to talk a little bit about. We don't want you to complete your SRSR in its entirety ahead of meeting with us, because we want to make sure that you're on the right track. And we don't want you to have to redo something completely if you're not on the right track. But at least take a look at some of these questions that are on the SRSR, start thinking about them, start generating some conversation with your team, be aware of some of the data that you may need to pull. You may need to talk to other administrators, you may need to talk to your school psychologists, you may need to talk to your PBIS coordinator if you have one, and just other people in the district. In regards to some of these different questions. This is just a very brief snapshot on the slide here. Like I said, there are a lot of questions on the SRSR. You will need to know about the involvement of families and PBIS. Culturally responsive practices is something that's a little bit new. They just added that in the last couple of years about your staff diversity, ensuring equitable distribution of resources. Do you provide any professional development on implicit bias? You'll need to know information about team membership for evaluations, manifestations, and then just a little bit about your processes for LRE and discipline. So following the SRSR, you will need to come up with an improvement plan. You will need to have SST involvement as part of your improvement plan. We do sign off on everything, as well as your superintendent and some other people in the district. So this is all outlined in your special education profile. It talks a little bit about all of these different things. It also talks about this in the manual. If you want to go into more extensive detail, we will need to upload your improvement plan, after we sign it and your district superintendent signs it, you will need to upload it to the monitoring system for it to be reviewed and approved by the state. So just know the improvement plan will have to have goals. You'll have to have activities that you're going to complete in order to prevent this finding in the future. Now, the due date for the SRSR and the improvement plan is April 1st, 2022. You'll need to have both documents completed and signed off by everybody and uploaded to the site by April 1st, 2022. So that's, kind of a quick turnaround sometimes. And I know there's a lot going on, especially in the springtime in school districts. So if you can, even get it uploaded a little bit earlier, that'll just be beneficial to everyone in the long run. Now, for each record that you submit to the state that's found to be non-compliant through the investigation of records, this outlines what you will need to do for individual correction. So on February 9th, once you submit those records, they'll take a look at everything. They'll see if there's anything that's non-compliant. They'll let you know. And then you will need to individually correct all of those records that you submitted. And so this just outlines some of the things in your special education profile and in the manual of what you'll need to resubmit to show that you corrected those student records. And then that due date is May 13th for the individual corrections to be uploaded to the site again. So when thinking about team membership, when organizing this team to complete the SRSR, you're going to want to consider district staff from both general and special education, district leadership team members. For disproportionality indicators, general education partners are required to be a part of the SRSR team, which may be a little bit different for a lot of people. A lot of times our general education partners are not always included in some of these processes, but it's really important that they are, especially for disproportionality, especially for discipline, because we want students to be in the general education environment as much as possible. So it's really important that we have our general education staff as a part of this team. So some suggested team members, there's not a specific, list of people that you need to include. There are a couple that are absolutely required, but these are just some food for thought, some considerations. So as you saw in the SRSR, you will need to list the names and titles of individuals completing that and working together on those plans. You'll note that there's an asterisk next to some team members. These are required members. General education partners must be a part of the SRSR team for all disproportionality indicators. This could be building principals, general education teachers, central office administrators. And like I said, general education partners are really important in this process because as we think of alternatives to suspension and other discipline, we want to make sure our students with disabilities are remaining in general education settings more often. And so you may have to help your staff with having more capacity to work with these students who may have behavioral or social emotional needs. District PBIS leaders would also be good representatives to have part of this team, school psychologists, counselors, special education teachers, intervention specialists. There can be a lot of different people that can be really helpful team members. Like I was saying, school psychologists are uniquely trained in behavior, and your building principals oftentimes, or your coordinators are a lot of times the people who are implementing some discipline for students. So it's important that they're a part of this process. We want it to be preventative before you actually need to get to discipline for a student. Here's a few more things to consider when it looks at your team members. Because there is a redirection of fiscal funds, your treasurer, your data managers are important individuals to have part of this. Your student services director, early childhood administrators, central office administrators. Some districts have a DEI coordinator, diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. They could be a part of this team. Curriculum, health and wellness, climate coordinators. And then in addition, a consultant from SST is required to participate and review your SRSR, as well as sign off on it before it is submitted. That is not for a data appeal, but that is for if you are found to have a non-compliant finding that is not related to a data appeal. So scheduling time for your SRSR. Like I said, SST needs to be involved. So we have some dates already listed out and blocked in our calendars. These on the screen are the dates that are open in my calendar right now. I've blocked them out from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. In February. And I'm anticipating that we will need about an hour and a half to kind of go over things with your SRSR and your improvement plan. If none of these dates work for you, I know schedules are already busy and crazy. Please contact me. We will find a different day, a different time, and squeeze it in somewhere. And so my email is rachelu@sst8.org. And it's also on our website if you need it. It may be difficult to complete the SRSR and improvement plan all at once in one sitting, especially if you don't pull any information ahead of time or kind of talk through some things with your team ahead of time. So we could separate it into 2 meetings if we needed to, or if we run out of time on that first meeting, we can schedule another one. But this is what I have on my calendar right now that's blocked out specifically for helping you complete your SRSR. Now, here's another due date for us. If the investigation of records process indicated non-compliance, you must submit records again in September, by September 30th, to show that there was improvement as a result of the activities listed in your improvement plan, revised policies, and things that took place between May and September. So I know that's kind of difficult for people because we have summer break thrown in there. The start of the school year is always crazy. The end of the school year is always crazy. But if they look at your records again and they say, hey, these records are non-compliant, and you submit them again, they're going to want another submission in September to show that you made systemic improvement with your processes and your records. Now, some schools will say, hey, we didn't have any discipline that occurred May, June, throughout the summer, in August, September. And then that's something we can talk about because you will have to submit information on like letterhead to the state saying, that you didn't have any records or things like that, or any discipline events that took place. So that's something that we can talk you through much later on as we get closer to that September date. But I've already thrown a lot of information at you today. So on here, I have a couple of slides. I'm not going to go through these. This just outlines what you need to do when you have to submit records again in September. It's very similar to what you did before. And so this is also listed in the manual, and it's also listed in special education profile. And we'll let you know a little bit more information again, if we need to do that process. Some common challenges or missteps that occur when it comes to completing the SRSR and the improvement plan. One of the biggest things is just ensuring that everything is completed as directed. Make sure you read those directions on everything. You want to make sure you prioritize and rank all the items. Make sure you have clear goals and activities to complete on your improvement plan. So that's something that we will kind of go over. We will sign off on everything once we see it is done, but every once in a while, there's something that kind of slips through, a box that doesn't get filled in or completed or something like that. So just make sure that you really go over everything and make sure you are following all the directions. So another area that has been an issue in the past has been not identifying your root causes, which have potentially led to the finding. And so ODE and OEC kind of changed things a little bit with some of their forms to make it easier. They now have a box that says root cause. Before it was kind of contained with some other things. Now they actually separate it out on the SRSR. So you will see a box that says root cause. So just make sure you have that completed. And then one of the biggest areas that the monitors say is really difficult is just submitting those records appropriately, following the steps that have been outlined in the manual and the steps that have been outlined in your special education profile required activities. Also, just maintain evidence of the activities you completed as part of your improvement plan. You might be completing trainings, so keep your certificates. You might have email correspondence, you might have training materials put together. Make sure you keep evidence of all of those things, because you will have to submit some information sometimes of how you did everything on your improvement plan. And then another big thing, due dates, deadlines. Those are things that we always run into. You know, the February 9th is a quick turnaround. We just came back from holiday break. April 1st is actually a very difficult date sometimes, because some school districts have a spring break at the end of March and it runs into the beginning of April. So make sure you look at your calendar. And if you are on break, I mean, you still have to get the information in by April 1st. So if you want to get it in before your spring break, you know, that would be great. Just make sure you don't miss that April 1st deadline. May, there's a lot of testing that goes on in May, especially at the secondary level. There's a lot going on with just, you know, end of the year kinds of activities. So the May deadline can be difficult sometimes for people. And then September is a quick turnaround. September 30th happens quicker than you think, especially as the school year gets rolling. So you really want to make sure you adhere to these dates and that you've got them in your calendars, and that you even submit things maybe a little bit in advance, so that you're not right up against the deadline. I just put a little slide in here, just a reminder of those deadlines. Like I said, February 9th, investigational records and data appeals. April 1st, your SRSR and improvement plan submitted. May 13th, individual corrections of records that are found to be non-compliant that you submitted from February 9th. And then all the way in September 30th, the next school year, you have to show evidence of your improvement plan activities and individual corrections again. So just wanted to throw that out there. If there's any questions and answers that you need to ask, we will have a live Q&A session on January 12th in the afternoon. It'll be from 2 o'clock to 2:30 with Janine and I, and it will be via Zoom. I've got the Zoom link there on the screen and the passcode, which is the word indicator. If you're able to join us from 2 to 2:30, you can jump on the Zoom, ask Janine and I any questions about disproportionality, whether it's identification, placement, discipline, the SRSR, the improvement plan, due dates, activities, information you need to submit. You can really ask us anything during that time. That time is dedicated on that day to a live Q&A session. So just follow the Zoom link and use the passcode. A lot of people already have things on their calendars. If you cannot make it to the live Q&A session, please, and you do have questions later on, please just reach out to Janine and I. It's probably a good idea to put both Janine and I on the question, because sometimes she'll get to the question first or I will. But it's good for us to both see what kinds of questions are out there, because I'm sure you're not the only one with that question. And sometimes we do send out information to the region as a whole, or to a specific listserv or email group to answer questions that might be very common among everybody. So like I said, live Q&A session on January 12th from 2 o'clock to 2:30. If you can join us, great. If not, feel free to contact us via email or give us a call. Our number's on the website as well. And we will make sure that we get all those questions answered for you. Like I said, we are here to help you anytime. We are always available. We are typically here from 8 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., Monday through Friday. Email is usually the best way to get a hold of Janine and I, because we are in a lot of meetings. We're also out in a lot of districts right now. And so if you email us, we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. We are here to help support you through this process. Hopefully it doesn't seem too overwhelming. Several of you may have been through some of this before, so not much has changed. But we just want to make sure that we support you any way that we can. So please reach out to us and we will hopefully be able to answer your questions. And if Janine and I don't have an answer, we will reach out to the state and get an answer for you. Thank you for your time today. Everybody have a great day.